Take a seat. You're welcome to sit down. So we moved to Wishick, North Dakota. And for those that don't know where Wishick's at, which is probably most
99.9999999.
It's smack dab in the middle of rural North Dakota. We are 90 miles from everything.
Nathan's hometown. And south central North Dakota, you and I had never heard of it or thought of it, south of I-94 in North Dakota.
Wishick is 90 miles from everything, though.
Right, which actually made it great for Dad's family business that he grew up in. And Dad was working corporate and he had a big opportunity. So my husband Nathan and I had gotten married. We were living in Fargo, raising you there. I had a great job at an advertising agency. He was a successful sales manager in a pharmaceutical company and had an opportunity to move up and with the pharmaceutical company. And that would have taken us to Bridgewater, New Jersey. And Dad knew that opportunity was there. And I believe he was in a hotel and a steakhouse in Sioux City, Iowa. And he had done an interview in St. Louis, Missouri, and knew that this opportunity was there for us to move to Bridgewater. And he would have to be there for 2 years. And then we would move to a hub, one of like 6 cities of a region that then he would be able to advance. And if we wouldn't have had you, we probably would have been like, sure, we're up for the adventure of the corporate wheel. But I said to him at that moment, I was like, I think we should move to Wishick. And he had no plans to move back to his hometown or take over the family business with his dad. But I always said the lumberyard made his eyes sparkle. And when I said that, he just loved working with his dad, and the lumberyard made his eyes sparkle, meaning like if we went to visit his parents on a weekend, he would get up early to go work at the lumberyard, which used to be open on Saturdays. And his dad was a brilliant man, and just, Nathan and his dad, Eldon, who we lost this past year, had a really unique father-son relationship. So I still remember I was driving into the garage in South Fargo where we lived, and Nathan had moved into our home that you and I had before we got married. And I just said, I think we should move to Wishick and you should consider that. So Dad took a 70% pay cut. We walked away from pharmaceutical benefits and the Volvo XC90. I really wanted to buy out the Volvo XC90, and he said I couldn't drive that in Wishick. I still want a Volvo XC90. And yeah, corporate benefits of the pharmaceutical company. And back in that day, I always joked, Dad would make more in bonus in those years than I made in salary. And yeah, we walked away from all of that and really thought we had lived our best life, which is so naive when you're young. We thought like, oh yeah, 28 and 31 years old, we had just lived our best life of the corporate wheel because we were just going to take over a lumberyard and that was going to be it. And we moved to the most elderly county per capita in the nation.
McIntosh County.
And McIntosh County.
We're known for a few things: sauerkraut, sausage,
and
old people.
And I moved there pregnant with Elizabeth, your sister, and I learned that, elderly ladies make a lot of baby blankets when there's a new pregnant lady. They don't, by the way, German Russian ladies, they don't like go up to you and introduce themselves. They just kind of whisper across the grocery store, "That's Nathan Pinke's wife."
Oh, yeah, sure.
And then they bring you baby blankets at church.
Nice. What's it like raising kids in a small town? You've now done it in Wishick and now in Northwood. What are the advantages of raising a kid in a rural small town?
Well, this could be a whole podcast in itself because it's been a very intentional decision that Dad and I made, right? And so Nathan... Obviously, we've gone through the story, but Nathan adopted you. We moved to Wishick, and you had my maiden name. I gave you my maiden name, and I thought I would actually hyphenate and use both names, but you wanted to be Hunter Pinke. And so we were there in Wishick, Pinke Lumber. You just on your own had started calling Dad, and you wanted to change your name to Hunter Pinke. And so that was one thing I would just say is people can knock small towns as like not being inclusive or being cliquey or you have to be there from there but you felt a part of something bigger by moving to a small town because it was your really mom's new husband's hometown and you felt a part of it there by like instantly. You felt like you were a part of something and you were proud to be from there instantly. And so you ordered a sweatshirt in fourth grade with the last name Pinke on it. And I thought it was a mistake. And I said, oh, like, because you and I still use the last name, my maiden name. And then you said, no, I'm a Pinke now. And so I think there's, of course, disadvantages and advantages to anywhere you raise kids. But Dad and I chose to raise you and your sisters in a rural small town environment. I would say 19% of America is rural. And I wanted to raise kids close to family. Multi-generational family is extremely important to us. And I like the rural public school environment. We had been in private school. Again, great foundation. But I do call it the Christian school bubble. And I think it's important, we're Christians, to be in the world and to learn to be a Christian in the world. And that's important in your faith. And I think that all of us have done that. And we all fall short. We're all sinners. But I love small town churches. I love small town communities. I served on the city council. Dad was on the hospital board, the school board. I was on the job development authority. We were very active in our church. We taught a lot of Sunday school. There's opportunities that in this day and age, I think people really lack community sometimes, especially in a city. And I use this as an example. In a city, you can have so many different circles.
Yeah.
And so you have your work circle and you can have your neighborhood circle and you can be in some sort of club and then you can go to the gym. And if you are a church attender, less than 40% of America goes to a church or a mosque or a synagogue of any type
of religion,
any type of religion. These generations are not going. I love small town churches for community. And so, but in a city, you can have all these different circles of people and your circles don't really have to intersect, and you can be a different person professionally than maybe you are back in your neighborhood or maybe you are at the gym or even at your church. But in a small town, you're all in the same circle.
Yeah.
And there's advantages to that. And there are really tough disadvantages to that because there are things that stay with you, whether you want them to follow you or not. And there are people that you work with that then sit next to you in church. And you also sit next to them in the bleachers when your kids are teammates, and it's just all one circle. So people can say, oh, I hate being from a small town, or I wouldn't do that. And I would say, I find it's a stronger environment to raise kids in for us. And we did it intentionally. And certainly there have been challenges and tough times, but we have intentionally raised our kids in rural North Dakota and chose to base our careers from there. We could have gone many different places. Mm-hmm. I could have been in a different place in my career. Dad could have been in a different place in his career, but we chose to raise our kids in small towns.
I think that circle analogy is really, really useful because you've got all these different little circles and it kind of creates this widespread net, but then you bring all these circles together and it really just almost becomes a fist and you're so tight with people. And no, you might not like certain things about somebody, but you know who they are. Like you're in the same circle as them and you know that your kid can ride their bike down to school, no problem.
Right.
And they can go to the swimming pool in the afternoon and you don't have to worry because you know the circle of your town.
Right. And around the same time, I was an early adopter of social media and I worked for an advertising agency. So I did get active in social media at the time when we moved to Wishick. And so I then found other like-minded rural moms in small towns in social media. One of my dearest friends to this day is a rural mom that I met on Twitter I guess it's X now, but, we met in the olden days. I was Fran Maturi and I were the only people on Twitter in McIntosh County. And I met someone in 2 counties over on Twitter. So I ended up getting active in agriculture organizations because of social media, but I met like-minded people that were also passionate for agriculture, which I am, and rural moms. And I still, to this day, have a pack of women that we call each other the Prairie Mamas. And all rural North Dakota moms, all raised our kids in rural North Dakota, but we wouldn't have gotten connected if it wasn't for social media in those early days of social media and yeah, being rural moms.
Growing up in Wishick was awesome. I loved growing up in the small town. I think my sisters would tell you the same thing that we get to see urban kids and growing up in a big city. And sure, it'd be nice to be 5 minutes away from a Target and have all the opportunities that they have that you might not have in a small town. But you told me for a long time, if you're good enough, they'll find you. And
Yeah.
you can become good in a small town, whatever you choose to put your mind to. And the community that I felt, I'm proud to say that I grew up in Wishick, and my sisters will say the same thing about Northwood. We're proud of where we're from because of the people that made it. And thank you for not moving to Bridgetown in
Bridgewater, New Jersey.
Bridgewater, New Jersey, because that would be a different way of living. I'd be considered a Jersey boy, some Jersey boy with, I don't even know, short hair and white
Well,
t-shirt.
I just think that there's not a wrong way. Everybody does it different, and you can find your own way.
There's not a wrong way, but there is a better way. And we get to have opinions. So small town living, I get it. I get why people live in big cities, but there is huge. I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages.
And it's not for everybody. Rural North Dakota is cold. It keeps the riffraff out in January, but there are advantages. And we moved, your dad's parents, your grandparents lived across the street from the school. You got to have a lot of meals.
Every game day I go across and we'll have to get some pictures of some of the meals. We took a lot of pictures. The food the camera ate first. You have lots of pictures of the food that we ate at Grandma's house, but I had tons of meals before games. It was awesome. It was a good way of growing up.
And German Russian cooking, that area of North Dakota was I mean, people came there later.
Top German foods. Go ahead, name them.
Cheese buttons, Nefla. What else do you love?
Pigs in a blanket, not the hot dog wrapped in dough.
No.
We're talking cabbage
rolls. Yeah.
Pigs in a blanket. Flesh kikla.
Well, Nana doesn't make that, but Kuchen, obviously.
Strudels.
Yeah.
Any type of cream sauce.
Sauerkraut and sausage.
Pair it with some Wishick sausage.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that area, so my family was Norwegian Lutheran and Eastern North Dakota had come in the 1880s, but those families came a little bit later. So 3 counties of German Russian heritage, really thick and really influenced you in Dad's hometown. And that you were very proud to come from that environment and different way. And I worked a remote career and your sisters were born there and we ended up moving back up closer to my family. But yeah, we've chose the small town life. And we've exposed you to big city life.
Absolutely.
We always traveled.
Yeah. I remember you would always say, Hunter, big fish, little pond, we want to expose you to the ocean and go and see what else is out there. And you gave me those opportunities. I got to go to the International Science Fair in Los Angeles.
What did you forget when you went to
I forgot all my dress clothes. So you had to express ship them to Los Angeles.
It's expensive.
But I got to do that. I mean, I got to play basketball around the country. You gave me opportunities to not only succeed in the small town, but also have my eyes open to, okay, let's go out and this is the world and you can compete. And
we made a lot of deals with you though. So I was a strict mom. Yeah. I still am.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a different relationship now as adults, but I always said, I wasn't there to be your friend and I'm there to be your mom. And so we had some rules, like for travel basketball, you had to have good grades.
Yep.
Or you wouldn't play travel basketball. And we exposed you to bigger opportunities outside of a very small fishbowl. And I wasn't interested, I'm not interested still to this day of just raising kids that are big fish in a little pond, because you get out into the real world and truthfully, you're not prepared. And so we did travel, we exposed you. Your sisters, our daughters, have been to a children's museum in pretty much every major city that you ever played football in.
Yep.
So college football, your sisters are 10 plus years younger than you. Anytime we went to a major city for a football game, I made them go to a children's museum. They've been exposed to culture in other places because we were always going back to rural North Dakota, which is where we want to be.
Yep.
But it's important to expose yourself to a bigger world.
Speaking of a bigger world, you talked about it. I got my eyes open when I went to the University of North Dakota and got to play football and got to travel around. And you probably had just as much fun with the parent group at the UND as I did with even my teammates, and they're still your friends today, just like my teammates are still my friends. That was a super fun phase of life for us, I think, as a
Yeah.
family. And then I go on a ski trip in the winter of 2019, and just give me what you remember about that situation. We had just lost down in Thibodeau. The season had come to an end. Kind of give me the story of how you remember it leading up into that ski trip.
Right. I think it's important to acknowledge the community. And the most important part of anything, whether your kids are in chess club or future business leaders of America or on an athletic team, it's actually the people that you're doing it with. And you speak to that a lot.
Yeah.
But it's actually, as a parent, nobody is actually going to remember who the stars were when everybody gets older. And I think that's important. We see that with my dad, your grandpa. Everybody was great. When you get to be 70 years old, they were all great on great teams. And it doesn't matter. It's the relationships. So leading into that, I think it's important to acknowledge we went to Thibodeau with the whole group of parents because, first of all, we thought we were going to get a Midwest playoff game. So we thought we were maybe we would host, maybe we'd go to Northern Iowa.
In Iowa, right.
But it was the week of Thanksgiving, and we would travel because, again, were you the star? No. But did you play? Yes. And even parents who had kids that weren't playing yet, we would travel as a group because who you do life with matters. And we loved that parent group. And I think even if you're involved in high school athletics to this day, the people that you're sitting with, it doesn't actually matter the playing time, or it matters who you're doing it alongside and to enjoy those experiences. So we knew that for some of our dear friends, that game when we got placed to Nicholls State, I always say I didn't know we could go south of New Orleans. And then I looked at Thibodeau and I'm like, whoa, we are going
out there
in the bayou.
Yep.
And so we couldn't get plane tickets because it was a holiday week and it was Thanksgiving week. And for the four of us to go to fly into New Orleans was wild expensive. And I think it was Alex Cloyd's dad, James Cloyd, a fellow tight end with you, had thrown out the idea like that we could rent an RV. And I'm sure he was kidding. But dad,
straight out of Lampoons almost of like,
but dad,
let's rent the RV.
let's just so we're clear, dad loves, sorry, you have like flies. Flies are coming in this time of year.
If this fly lands on me, it is going to die. Get this on camera. It better be on camera for Liza.
Okay.
It's on me. Hold on. It's called quick hands, guys.
Did you kill it?
Quick hands. Oh, yeah. Come on. They can catch footballs and they can kill flies. Quick hands.
There you go. So I think, dad loves planning vacations. And that's something dad and I, we've been purposeful in budgeting to take you on a vacation each year. And you and your sisters have this age gap. And I was always concerned that you weren't going to be close. And you are very close. And we've spent a lot of intentional time together at home, playing games, traveling, whatever it may be. So we wanted to take the girls with us. And James Cloyd, I think, had thrown out the idea to dad that we could rent an RV. And dad loves to plan vacations. And on very short notice, he rented an RV. And it was so cold in Fargo, we couldn't you couldn't put the, whatever dad would tell you, all the fluids and stuff in because it would have froze. So we had to wait till we were farther south. So the first night we drove from Fargo, North Dakota to Springfield, Missouri, and stayed in a KOA, which, take a look at a map, that's a long drive.
Yep.
In Sunny. We were in the Sunseeker. And
Sunny was the name of the RV.
Well, that's what we called it. It was a Sunseeker. I still, to this day, depending on where your sister goes to college, I still want to buy a small RV to drive around to track meets.
My dad would probably not want that.
He actually is getting more warmed up to it.
We'll see.
We'll see. So we love traveling. So we went to Thibodeau. So we drove all the way. Like, we stopped in Memphis.
Let's put an image of how far it is from Northwood, North Dakota, down to Thibodeau. We're gonna put a Google Map image on. That's a long way. We'll throw the amount of miles up on the screen as well.
Two days.
So you guys go down all the way to Thibodeau, and we get our butts kicked.
Yeah, it was so disappointing.
Yeah, we did not play well. Our season comes to an end. That drive back had been long because
except for one night.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So you guys get back. It's the end of November. And then that December, I tell you, I'm going to Keystone.
Yeah, that year had been a big year. You had told us the prior New Year's Eve, we were at our family lake home. You said that 2019 was going to be a big year. There's going to be big change. Do you remember this?
I could feel it. It was on my
Yeah.
heart. I was like, something big is going to happen.
And
I don't
so
know
we
what.
did all the big things because you knew that the girls were in elementary school. We were going to expand our business. We were going to move them up to Northwood. So we were doing that. We'd sold our house. We were doing different things. And so I felt like we had done all the big things. And like all the big things were over. And we were just going to wrap up 2019. And it was my grandmother's, your great grandmother, 90th birthday, right before Christmas. So all of our family was home. And when I say all of our family, like we have a pretty tight knit, close family. And I think what's unique also is we've always included Nathan's side of the family as well. So that was, so your grandparents and Nathan's sister, and that we all gathered together and we were all at the farm for Christmas in the matching pajamas I bought everybody.
Yeah. We can throw that picture up there too. I still remember I'm holding one of my crying cousins in those matching pajamas. So I leave the day after Christmas.
I didn't feel good about it. And I don't think you had really talked about it, but it was your best friend and roommate's kind of grad gift from his family. And you were traveling with a family that we had traveled a lot with, the Wanzicks. And I just said, you're a Division I scholarship athlete. This might not be the best idea. And you don't always agree with me. And you were like, it's going to be fine, Mom. We've skied before, which is true. We had gone skiing before, maybe your freshman year of college, and it was just fine. And you were going with a family that you knew and trusted. And I just said, yeah, be safe. Come home. Be safe.
We go to Keystone. I remember I called you the morning of.
Yeah, you always tell that story in like some I'm going to call my mom to make sure she didn't call me anymore.
Yeah, I called you, but that was my intent. Was like, I'm going to call her the first morning, let her know everything was good last night. We got in, everything is fine. And then I really wasn't going to talk to you much because we were going to be skiing in the backcountry. And I do remember at the end of that conversation, you said probably what you've said millions of times to me and my sisters as well. And I think probably every mother says
Be
this,
safe.
just be safe. And I said, exactly what every kid does. I will. Yeah.
I do think that you and I have a different relationship in terms of communicating in that you call me a lot for
Yeah.
a guy in his 20s. You and I have a close relationship. I've been your mother my entire adult life. We've grew up together, had a lot of experiences. So you're a communicator with me. I'm a communicator with you. So we had a kind of a different relationship in that I don't think a lot of guys in their 20s communicated with
Yeah.
their mom as much.
True.
I always knew when you had a girlfriend because you called me a little bit less. And then when you had broken up, you called me a little bit more.
That's how it works.
And so, but you had communicated. So I knew that I had heard from you and I wasn't expecting to hear from you for maybe the rest of the trip, but for sure the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And then the Apple Watch, I looked down on my phone, my watch. We were in Wishick after the holiday and the girls were there and Dad was working at the lumberyard, I think selling a house to somebody. And Tracy Wanzik was calling on my watch. I could see. And I knew in that moment that something was wrong because Noah's dad would not be calling me. And that I remember looking down and thinking something's wrong because Hunter had just called me and this shouldn't be happening. And Tracy had said there had been an accident and that you hadn't come down with the guys and they were going up and that there had been a collision. And he was shaken in his voice and I could tell, but he didn't know a lot. I think he was at the bottom yet and you were still up there on the mountain. And then ski patrol. So Elizabeth and Annika were in 4th and 6th grade. And so they called the lumberyard several times to get a hold. We have a policy in our family that if you call multiple times, Dad stops what he's doing and, picks up right away. And so they had said that something had happened, that he needed to come home. And then that was when it was just Dad and I in our small bedroom in our little house in Wishick. And that was when we talked to ski patrol. And we knew at that time that there was no feeling and you weren't moving anything, but that you were conscious.
So you get that call, and as a mother, what are the emotions that are running through?
I have been in childbirth a few times. And I would tell you my breathing was like I was like in childbirth. Like I had to focus on breathing. And I when you've launched a child, you get to the adult phase, and I do think you kind of relax, like, whew, like your child flies out of the nest and you hope they can fly. And if they fall, you pick them back up, and sometimes you let them come back to the nest, or you help them fly again. But you were 22 years old, and you were going in your senior year, and you're going to finish with a mechanical engineering degree. So for me, it was just this, like, this is my adult child who I've parented my whole life and my whole adult life. And I couldn't catch my breath. And I was literally in what I would call like a survival moment of, I can't explain the anguish that I experienced in that moment. We have unfortunately, several couple friends that have lost sons. And I do think of them in those moments because you're here today with me and our friends didn't get that. And so I'm very conscious of that you're here in the living with me. And I think of our friends who lost their sons in accidents. And I was just overwhelmed. And Bubba Schweigert's already been your guest on this podcast. And it was really Bubba, and I think you alluded to this in your previous episode with him, that shifted that mindset. He said, we're going to take care of the media for you. Well, because we knew that you were with other athletes and this was going to get out on social media. And then he just told me, like, you put out your side, what you want, share it in social media, and then we'll take care of the rest. And then he said to Dad, like, is there any chance he's not going to make it? And that shifted it for me. Like, I hadn't spoken to you yet, but you were conscious. And I knew that you weren't physically moving, but you had said something to Ski Patrol, like, tell my mom I'm going to be all right. And
Yeah,
so
I remember that. Yeah.
the Ski Patrol lady that you flirted with, I think got that message back. Like, Hunter wanted me to tell you he's going to be all right.
Because I knew you'd be worrying.
And I was just like, the anguish of, like, I couldn't. And so that really spurred me of, like, okay, he spoke to Ski Patrol. And we were in Wishick, North Dakota, and needed to get to Denver. And there was a huge blizzard in between. And so all the flights have been canceled. So there was nothing out of Bismarck, nothing out of Aberdeen. And the only thing we could find was a Delta flight to Minneapolis out of Fargo later in the day. So we had to fly east to go west, and then we could get a flight into Denver once we got to Minneapolis. So that's what we did. And I have thanked the neurosurgeon PA, I would say, like a mid-level neurosurgeon PA. Do you remember his name? And we still have a picture with him, but he didn't tell me the whole story. So we pulled over on 94. We were driving from Wishick to Fargo to get on that flight because we knew you were going into surgery. And my cousin and his wife, Scott and Elizabeth Huso, were in the Denver area for Christmas, and I knew that. So I got a hold of them. They came to the ER to see you. You had just gotten an Apple Watch. Do you remember that? You had just gotten an Apple Watch in your stocking. No longer did you get orange pop in your stocking. And you had the Apple Watch on. I don't know if you remember this, but Dad tracked you on your Apple Watch. So that was before you turned off your location with your parents.
Yeah, that's no longer on.
But you had your location on because you had just gotten an Apple Watch, and they couldn't airlift you from Frisco, Colorado into Denver because of the storm. They had to ambulance you on the ground because of the storm. And so Dad tracked you on the location of your Apple Watch. And so we could see you in the ambulance, your location. That helped me too. And then the neurosurgeon PA, just told us what your imaging looked like and told us what the surgery was going to be. And that was at St. Anthony's Hospital in Lakewood, Colorado. And at that point, we're in Hector International Airport in Fargo, North Dakota. And it was still a long ways from Denver. And it had gotten out among the football team where you were. And I think this is the really important part of community. If you listen to nothing else, it didn't matter who the star was in that moment. It didn't matter if you were a freshman or a senior. It didn't matter who you were. If you at that moment were a part of, are you crying?
I got tears in my eyes.
If you were a part of the University of North Dakota football team, and it was Christmas time, and you lived within Denver Metro, they all came
Yeah, they all showed up.
Mm-hmm. And their parents.
Mm.
So by the time we got to the Denver airport, and my sister and her husband lived north of Denver, and they got in their vehicle with their children and started driving from the farm in North Dakota back to Denver, and they drove through the blizzard through the night to get back also.
They came, and then a couple days later, like my closest friends on the team that were still back in Wisconsin and North Dakota and Minnesota, they got in a car and drove. And I remember they said by West Platte, it was sheer ice. They're going 30 miles an hour. They drove through the night. Like, yeah, my people showed up.
Yeah, and in that moment, so we're in neurotrauma ICU waiting room. You're still in surgery. Teammate family picked us up at the airport, brought us there. You're in surgery still. And, we thought because the neurosurgeon PA did not tell me that you had a severed spinal cord, and he could see it, and he didn't tell me that. And I just thought that like there was like some bone chips or something that was like putting some pressure on your spine, and then they were going to clean that all up, and then you were going to be okay. Because I had not ever processed or thought about you being paralyzed in that moment, that you were not going to come out of surgery. And so we just were praying, and we are praying people, and we put out a picture of you and just said that you've been in a ski accident and that you're conscious in social media. You're conscious, and we'd like everyone to pray, and you were in surgery. And you put out a picture, which wasn't the best, but you put out a picture of yourself in the ER, maybe a little amped up on pain meds, saying that you will walk again. And we just thought they were going to do a little cleanup, as you said, and then I thought you'd come out of surgery. I also didn't Google any of it, and that you would be okay. And in the end, we found out that your spinal cord had been severed at the T6, T7 level. And we had to meet with the neurosurgeon after that surgery in the 5 a.m. hour. But during that time, and I think it's important to know, the people who you meet in your journey of life come back, and they give you the nuggets that you need. And in the moment of being in the neurotrauma ICU, I can still feel that waiting room area. One of your teammates' mothers had brought literally the blanket off of her couch, and I was wrapped in it. I still have it today. It's still at the lake. You probably know which one it is, but I still feel like that is a hug. And I was wrapped in that blanket, and I didn't want to look at all the messages, but I had a message at the top. I had been to a speaker training. I'd done a lot of public speaking. I had been to speaker training in 2014, and there was a quadriplegic and a paraplegic, 2 women. Those were the only people I'd ever met in wheelchairs before. And one of them had reached out to me and sent me a message. It was at the top of my messages. And she said, "You just need to get to the next hour in this moment." And this woman had been in an accident when she was 16 and I knew her life, and she had like such a big life as a paraplegic. And I remember looking at that and thinking, okay, it's like 1:37 a.m. and I need to get to 2 a.m. And that's how I lived. And so I got to the 5 a.m. hour. We met with the neurosurgeon. Neurosurgeons are brilliant, and they do great work, not the best bedside manner. And I was devastated after talking to him. And I couldn't really go back to the waiting room. And you were still not conscious, and we were going to go into ICU and tell you what the neurosurgeon had told us. And so as I sat in a quiet area between where you had come out of surgery and the waiting room where everybody from the football team, Denver metro area, was waiting, and someone from recovery walked by, someone I recognized that had been in your recovery room area. And I said, I said, "I'm Hunter Pinke's mom. Were you just in his surgery?" And she said, "I was." And I said, "So you know the extent of his injuries?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you have children?" And she said, "I do." And I said, "If this was your child, what would you do?" And so she coached me to just say, I would just tell him exactly what it is and nothing more. And so Dad and I walked down the hall knowing that you were going to be conscious in neurotrauma ICU at St. Anthony's. And Dad said, "What are we going to say?" And that was when I said, we're going to I've said it a lot of times, but looking at you makes me cry. So hold on. Do you remember what I said?
Remember?
Yeah, I said you're going to have a life. It's just not going to be the one you had planned.
Yep.
Yeah.
You still have a life. It's
Yep.
just not.
You still have a life. It's just not going to be the one you planned. So that was crushing for me because as a mother and as any type of parent, you want it to be you. So then from then on, I told you that. And people ask me all the time, is Hunter Pinke like, oh, is he like that all the time? He must have some bad days, even though he says no bad days. He must have bad days. And I'm like, no, actually, what you see is what you get. Hunter is like this all the time. Believe me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always around him.
Yep.
So you cried. First of all, I think you lost a lot of emotion during that time because you needed to just recover and push through. And you got pretty hard in that you had to survive.
Yep.
And so you turned off a lot, but you just cried a couple times. And that one of those times, and one thing was you said, is anybody going to love me? And that was like, as a mom, I just wanted to. So crawl into your bed. So I made the deal with God pretty much every day in those ICU days. I would make the deal with God that I was going to crawl into your bed, lay next to you. I was going to die.
Yeah.
And you were going to get out of bed and walk.
Oh.
That was like, because you try to make deals with God in your desperate moments, and you try to rationalize what's happening. And also, if you've been in a neurotrauma environment, there's only nurses only have like 1 or 2 patients. And you're also in this like glass area where you see a lot of other accidents and severe trauma, and like you were conscious and other people aren't. And so you see families in despair and heartbreak, and I got to have great experiences with the nurses and just the medical staff. And that neurosurgeon PA came in, and I said to him, you knew Hunter's spinal cord was severed. And before we came here, you didn't tell me, and you could see it. And he said, I knew that you weren't here yet, and I knew we weren't going to be able to fix the spinal cord. So I decided to not tell you so you could get here first. And I'm so thankful for that, because I don't know how I would have emotionally gotten to Denver knowing that you had a severed spinal cord. I definitely would have Googled it. And I got to Denver, and I'm glad for the process and thankful for the people that surrounded us in the community. And I do want to say, everybody in a moment of trauma, because you don't know what to do when you're an outsider, you say, if there's anything I can do, let me know. If there's anything I can do, let me know. And in trauma, you can't let anybody know, because you don't even know what you need. And so an action that I learned is to do something. And I had gotten a fruit basket, an edible arrangements fruit basket, into neurotrauma ICU right after. It was the next morning. And I looked at the card, and it was from a carpenter that we had worked with in Wishick, North Dakota. And it was from him. And that was the first thing I remember. And he sent that to us because he had had cancer, and we had sent that to him at Mayo, and he remembered that. And I've seen him since at a game and thanked him for that. And he goes, I'll always remember that you sent that to me. And there was people that came and offered to do our laundry, strangers that were connected somehow to somebody on the team or that did our laundry. There was people, my sister lived right north of Denver. She brought us king size pillows. Yeah. Because hospital pillows are so uncomfortable.
Right.
And so I learned from that moment to do something. There was people that donated Marriott points or something like that to get Dad and I a hotel stay, and Tracy Wanzik came and stayed with you at the hospital so we could sleep a little. And so to do something in trauma is really important too. And sometimes that's donating to the GoFundMe. Sometimes that's showing up at a fundraiser or a prayer service. And like, we don't have to physically see, but if you want to come along and rally alongside someone in trauma, it's to do something.
Yeah. Both of us can attest in our lives there is power in prayer. We felt the power of prayer. and the peace that overflows through that, the amount of peace that I had all through that, and I think spilled over into the rest of my family. I think that comes from prayer. But let your prayer have legs.
Yeah.
Let your prayers run and go do something with
And
it.
to
Let them
move.
walk.
And
Yeah,
and
move
I
with
think
it.
that's important in that people, so we, of course it wasn't intentional. It just happened and it was God led. I I felt that I needed to communicate with others because there was a lot of people asking for information and we wanted to protect your privacy, but also share a greater specific prayer requests. We knew that we had a short amount of time, that if something was going to change with your injury, it would happen in the first few days. I'm sorry for all the times I asked you if you could feel your toes.
I still can't feel my toes.
But you used to kind of trick me when you kind of finally came out of ICU and you were just in neurology, on the neurology floor. You would be like, "Oh, mom, maybe I can," and like it was like a joke, which is not funny when you're the. Are you okay there? Neuro, but you used to try to like joke with me that you could start feeling something, but you never could. But I needed to live with the injury, and I just wanted to change it so much, and I was full of anger and disappointment and despair, and I was at the lowest of lows.
So then, we do 10 days in the original hospital where I had my surgery. I get to go to Craig. And what was the perspective from the parent going to Craig and seeing, your son start to get better, but probably not the better that you were hoping for?
Well, first of all, shout out to Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota for New Year's Eve. I told them that they weren't going to get to the new year until they pre-approved you to go to Craig Hospital. That was that's a whole podcast in itself, but you were on my employment insurance, my employer's insurance, and I did not qualify for FMLA because you were too old. You were like an adult age child, and so there was a whole thing of that. You were on my personal insurance, and I had to argue with insurance on New Year's Eve because we knew you were going to get better. And by the way, I'm not blaming the insurance company. It's just there's a lot of communication between the hospital, the insurance company, where you're going to go for rehab. You had to get accepted kind of into Craig Hospital. That had to get pre-approved by the insurance company. We're in Colorado. Our insurance company's back in Fargo, North Dakota. And I think I said something to the effect of Blue Cross Blue Shield, like, you are not going out for New Year's Eve until this is done.
Mama Bear came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I worked very hard from neurology waiting room to get that pre-approved. And there were a lot of people behind the scenes. I think in every story we're telling, there are so many people that were alongside of us. Mm-hmm. And so there were people from the hospital also. We had a advocate. I mean, every hospital, but yeah, like a social worker advocate helping us. We had someone at Craig Hospital helping us. And my goal, my birthday is January 6th. And like, I wanted you out of there. I wanted you to go to Craig Hospital by my birthday. And you transferred to Craig Hospital on my birthday.
15 minutes down the road. Top 10 rehab facility in the world, specializes in traumatic brain injuries as well as spinal cord injuries. And I got to get in there less than 10 days after my accident. That's a miracle in itself.
It was.
So we do 2 months of inpatient at Craig. I gain a lot of function back, none of it in my legs, but my shoulders get better. I learned how to live independently. I remember early on, I had no shoulder function. You would always push my wheelchair. And I would joke around with you, like my foot would fall off the wheelchair. And I'd be like, "Oh, my foot! Ow! Oh my goodness! Ow!" You'd be like, "Oh, Hunter! Oh my!"
And I was like, "Can you feel that?" He was
No,
like, "Mom, I'm a
kidding.
chest down paraplegic.
I can't feel my feet, but it did fall off.
And so I think it's important to know we were together every day,
Yeah,
all day long.
yeah.
And you had not lived at home since you were 18 years old, and you were now 22. And so that was a really intense time for us. And we got along beautifully. We had a couple moments. This is the second time I ever saw you cry. So you cried when we told you. And then you really didn't cry a lot. You were very cold, a little bit cold because you were in like survival mode. And I was a lot of emotion. So I tried to protect you. And I listened. My cousin Vienna would send me a Christian praise and worship song like every morning by text message. That's another great way you can support people. She would send me a different song, so I'd listen to a different song. And then Stephen Furtick, the
Mm-hmm.
Christian worship
Sure.
pastor,
Yep.
leader, preacher, I would listen to him in the shower, and I would just cry and scream and argue with God in the morning before, because I lived in an apartment right by the hospital, provided with the hospital, and then I would come over. And so I tried to protect you from that, but you and I spent a lot of time together. And one Sunday afternoon, I wheeled you over to my apartment to watch football, and people had given us a lot of DoorDash gift cards,
Mm-hmm.
and we had ordered DoorDash, and we didn't know it was going to snow in Englewood, Colorado that day. And we came out of my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. You didn't have rehab that day, and it had snowed, and we had to go up a little hill, and I couldn't get you up the hill. Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
And it was snowy, and we were kind of stuck in the snow, and you cried. And then I cried because I felt terrible because you were stuck in the snow,
Uh,
and I couldn't get you back to Craig Hospital from my apartment, and you cried. And so we didn't really talk about why you were crying. And then the next day, you said to me, I was crying because I couldn't help you. And that was the only other time I remember seeing you cry, like with emotion during rehab, because you just got into this like locked in mode of OT, PT. The one area that you didn't want to deal with was psych.
I, my psych had already been made up.
And I felt like you should really lock into
Yeah, like
psychology
I
and
think
see a
I
therapist.
think you were, oh yeah, go talk about it. And I'm like, my mind has already been made up. I know where I'm going, and I'm good. I'm good with what's happened, but I'm not gonna allow myself to just coast. I'm gonna get better. And so,
There's
my psychology appointments were very quick, and they were, hey, how you doing? I'm good. I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing. I'm ready to get better. I'm good. Let's get this going.
But
So
that was very locked into your faith. And so I think we have to say, like, there was a huge uplifting of prayer and people showing up for us in Colorado, and people from my past work experience and friends and teammates and old neighbors.
2,000 cards.
Yes.
2,000.
Random people sending us cookies.
Yeah.
It's just like so many things. But I want to just acknowledge that in that time there I was really struggling, and you were like really locked in. There's one story that we need to tell that won't get on the pod otherwise. Craig Hospital has amazing therapy, and there's all these different divisions of like, you're going to do OT, you're going to do PT, you're going to do psych. It's an amazing rehab place. And Dad needed to run our small business, and he would go back and forth from North Dakota. And your sisters came a couple times. My parents came a couple times. My sister lived nearby, and you didn't want to go to the sexual health class.
Ha!
Do you remember this? And you were like, you were 22, and you were like, I'm not going to the sexual health class with my mom. So we waited until Dad landed, and I said, no, you're 22 and you're a chest down paraplegic and you have to go. And you wouldn't go. So I'd given Dad the heads up. And so every other one that you were in therapy with had a girlfriend, a wife, a spouse, or a husband.
Yeah.
So there was like a married woman,
Uh-huh.
and her husband came, and she had children. And, there was a couple that they weren't engaged yet, but they're married now. And so you had this like group that you did rehab with, and they all had a significant other.
Hmm.
And you did not want to go to the sexual health class.
No.
And so Dad landed in Denver and came, and then Dad took you to the sexual health class.
There's nothing I would have wanted more than to go to a sexual health class with my father. Talk about nightmares.
Yeah. And so you came back, you were so mad. And I said, no, we are here at Craig Hospital. You're going to learn all the aspects of being a paraplegic. And so, because we spent a lot of time talking about learning to manage bowel movements and urine and all those things we had to talk about, and you didn't want to talk about sexual health.
Let's talk about the finer things of life. Sex.
Yeah. So you didn't want to talk to your mom about that. And so that was fine. I respect
I
that.
still don't want to talk to my mom about that.
Good. We're not going to.
Okay. All right. That's
But
good.
what I wanted you to do is get the full comprehensive experience at rehab.
Yeah.
And you were 22 and stubborn, and we're like, nope, I'm not going. And so on the psych side, I felt like, okay, I went and talked to the psychologist, and the psychologist said, no, actually, he's doing really well. But on the sexual health side, Dad went to the class with
I'm
you.
glad you made me do that. That's one of those moments that I fought against you, but I'm glad I went.
And there you learned.
You can still have sex as a paraplegic.
Yes. But you
You
went to
can still
class
have
with your dad.
you can still have children.
Yes.
And there's
And I wanted you to know that at age 22,
yeah,
that there was a future and hope for you and you didn't have to be down and out about it. But you went to sexual health class with your dad at rehab
yeah.
and you were embarrassed.
I was. It was beneficial though. It was beneficial.
Okay.
So we get done at Craig and we go home and
The pandemic hit. We heard
pandemic
this
hit.
thing.
There's lots of stories there. We don't have enough time today, but I just want a couple questions of I come home and I start living independently again. I go back to school. I finish up school. What was that like as the mother of a disabled adult child, seeing me getting back to life?
I had not dealt with my own emotions. So it was like the launching. It was like an intense parenting thing for me to like get to the next thing, get to the next thing, get to the next thing. And when we finally got you back at UND and it was the pandemic and it was a difficult time, but you were again living with your friends and football was going to happen again, just wasn't happening in the way that we thought it was going to. And you were a captain in a wheelchair. And I hadn't dealt with the emotion. And dad actually said to me, I was so emotional and we were in the midst of building a house. I remember at one point you said we either needed a marriage therapist or an architect. So we went to the architect because we were arguing about building our house. And it was just really emotional for me because we were changing the plan of our home because we now had a paraplegic son. And we were living at my parents' farm. And then we moved into our rental and all this was happening. And you said we needed to go to an architect because we were arguing about the house. And then dad said, I think you need therapy. And I was very offended that my husband would suggest I needed therapy. And because I was the mom. And the truth was I did. And I didn't know how to process. And it wasn't enough just for me to pray and talk about it. I needed professional help. And dad and so I said, I'm not going to therapy without you. So dad and we went to therapy together in Grand Forks, North Dakota. It was the best thing we did because I needed to work through my emotion. And my therapist taught me, and I learned this at Craig Hospital, first of all. Someone had told me that sometimes parents have a more difficult time with the actual injury than the actual person that was injured.
Yep.
And that was me in that moment, is that you had like launched and gone back to college and were finishing your engineering degree and planning grad school and all these things. And I couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
And I was still upset and arguing with myself about it. And I had a lot of guilt. And so, yeah, dad and I went to therapy together. And it would be considered marriage therapy, but it was really to help us through the trauma that we had gone through and then how to move forward together. And I'm very thankful we did that. And it helped me heal and process. And I can confidently say today, like, this was the purpose and plan. And I can see it all unfold now. But it took me longer emotionally to come out of what had happened to you than you, which I was ashamed of. And you shouldn't feel shame. But the lesson for me in it was everybody processes grief and trauma differently. And there's not a handbook and there's not a certain way. And so I did a lot of writing and sharing. We started the Pinky Strong group on Facebook and I shared details. And eventually I got away from that. I had a difficult time with the 27th of every month because that was the day you were injured. I had to like push through to get to a month where I wasn't in an emotional mess on the 27th of a month. And I'm really thankful that we got professional help. And I am thankful for the community of believers that really uplifted us in prayer, but also that my family gave me grace to process and grieve that your life was going to be different. And my counselor had said, like, you know, there wasn't a death. It was that my son's future was so different than I had planned and I couldn't change or control it. So we had to come up with the new path for you. And that led us to the University of Arizona and all that you've accomplished. And I think I poured myself into a lot of different things and your sisters and my work and the business. But I really did take longer to come through the emotion than you. What do you remember about that?
I remember coming home and just thinking my life is very different, but that doesn't mean that it needs to be over. And those words that you had said early on, the first words that I heard out of surgery, I remember I saw my eyes closed and somebody was holding on to my hand. Was it you or dad?
Me.
It was you.
Probably both of us, but
So somebody was holding on to my hand, and I remember you saying those words like, uh, "It's not the life that you plan, but you still have a life."
yep.
And it's not the plan that we had, but what I think we've seen over the past 6 years is no, our plan did not come true. Something far greater did.
And all that prepared us for it, right?
Yeah.
So like we went through a lot of other difficult lifetimes that prepared us for this, and this was the purpose that
Yeah.
was designed.
Somebody told us early on, Hunter is going to do more sitting in a wheelchair than he ever would have standing up on 2 feet, and that's hard to hear.
That actually ticked me off. I was like,
Yeah.
but that's not how I wanted it.
Yeah, it's not how we had planned it, but we can look back now and say that person was right. And God's orchestrates things in amazing ways that we don't have to understand, but we just have to trust it.
And I think we've done that together and as a family, but we also have allowed ourselves to evolve and grow and change. And I'm certainly not the person that I was in 2019, and I'm thankful
grateful for
that.
it. Yeah, right.
And I am grateful that, you know, I did allow myself, like you launched and got to the point where you were going ahead, and that allowed me the time and space to grieve and process, to make myself better then too, and to be a better mom and wife and professional, and really kind of throw off the other stuff that was hindering me that I needed to deal with. And I think there's no shame in processing trauma differently and knowing that your journey is not defined by one event, or we can have the time to, I call it the best yes. It's a Lisa TerKeurst's book from more than 10 years ago that I did a book study on, but you can say no to things in your life, and it can be like a chalkboard where you can erase your no later and have it be yes. But I learned in that time that I had to say no to a lot of other things to allow myself to heal, and not just gloss over what had happened, but actually to deal with the real and allow myself to grow too.
And you have, and sometime we'll have you next year maybe, and go over some of the things in your life where you've grown. But I know we have some time for some questions. Garrett, you got a question that you want to throw out?
Who is the best athlete in the family?
Who is the best athlete in the family, Mom?
This is a loaded question.
Be very careful. You know whose podcast you're on.
The best athlete when it comes to accolades in the family is Hunter's sister, Alyssa. And she is right up there giving
tough
snaps.
to hear. It's tough to hear.
And that actually goes back to my dad has done this since Elizabeth was a fifth grader, because Elizabeth did not, the University of North Dakota played at Washington, and Elizabeth chose to not go to the Washington game and to play basketball against Linton. Unfortunately, Elizabeth and Annika lost to Linton in the state qualifier game last year, but Elizabeth scored, I don't know how many points. She's pointing to me, 26 or something of her team's 34 points. And so my dad has always said that Elizabeth became the best athlete in the family in that game, and that you have argued about
in fifth grade. My grandpa would always say Elizabeth is the best fifth grade basketball player our family has ever seen.
Yeah,
she's turned into the best. She's turned into the best athlete, though.
But by the way, my
Accolades
brothers
wise.
and sister, and we have an athletic family.
That being said, I'm gonna argue. I'm pushing back on you. The best overall athlete is the girl sitting next to Elizabeth.
Is Annika.
Is actually our sister Annika. I'm actually might be the worst athlete of the three kids.
Yeah. Annika, everything has come easiest for Annika. Annika is 11 years younger than you. And, but Annika, everything has always come easier to Annika. So Elizabeth and you as a mother, okay, so any mother can relate to this. And I mean, I just don't have favorites, and the kids don't always understand that. Like, I can't have a favorite, but you have always had to work at everything you've gotten. You've worked hard. Math and science came easier to you. I feel like I prayed that in my pregnancy.
Because you didn't give it to me.
Yep. And math and science wasn't a thing for me, but you loved math and science. So I'm so thankful. And Elizabeth does too. But you and Elizabeth, you've had to work hard. So Elizabeth is up at 5:20 in our house. She's in the weight room. She's lifting. And Elizabeth still can't do a cartwheel. Like Annika just decided to do a cartwheel when she was 3 and like flipped across the gym when she joined gymnastics. So everything has come easier to Annika, and you and Elizabeth, being the older siblings, have always watched that. But Nathan likes to joke that no family talks about sports more than we do.
We love athletics. We love really competition. It doesn't even need to be. It could be a game of Settlers of Catan.
I was going to say, I knew you were going to say Catan.
Yeah, Catan. It could be
We've actually worn out Catan.
I would say Elizabeth, we'll see. Obviously, we hope that her career keeps going with college athletics. The guy that you looked up to growing up, that I look up to growing up, our grandpa Fred, what he did at UND.
He came from Standing Rock Indian Reservation. I'm from Fort Yates, North Dakota, and I think that's important, that you can come from anywhere and accomplish. Yeah. And he had
the best college career.
Well, he sat on the bench until the end, and he waited his turn, and then he got to have a great career at the end. And I think there's lessons in that too.
100%. We'll touch on that on another podcast. Anna, you got a question?
Yes. What's the best and hardest part about working for a family business?
Ooh.
We worked together.
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. You want me to take the first one on that?
Yeah, well, first we have to acknowledge that we work together.
Yeah, we do work together. We both work with Pinke Lumber and Pinke Homes, which is our family business.
And Pinke Structural Moving.
We
also have a little side
hustle. It's all under one umbrella, but...
and the side hustle.
We also are in real estate together. We own real estate and you manage a lot of it. The best part about, I think, anything you do in life is who you get to do it with. It doesn't matter if you're playing on a football team, if you're on a track team, if you're in a family business together, it's who you get to do it with. I love my family. You've instilled that in us. It is a love for the people that you're closest with. And whether it be building a house, whether it be farming and raising a crop, or whether it be playing the game of basketball, who you get to do life with is what makes it special. Mm-hmm. And that's the best part, is that you get to do it with people you love. That doesn't mean that's all easy. There's a lot of bumps in the road, but it makes it worthwhile. So
family business aspect is something we've been raised in. So first of all, we each have our own lane. And I think that's important to acknowledge.
Yeah.
So in Nathan, Hunter, and I working together in a business, we've had a really difficult past year because we lost Nathan's dad. And you came into the business, and I shifted my role in the business. I work full-time outside of the business in a marketing career, and we all have our own lane. And we also have some Airbnbs or short-term rentals, and we work together. But the reason it works is because we have our lanes and we respect one another in what our lanes are. And so when you're going to work in small business and family business together, you have to define roles.
Yep.
We communicate really well. We have weekly meetings together, weekly business meetings together. Mm-hmm. And then I think you and I and Dad and I have had to try to find a way to have a life outside of the business and not pull up to the island and start talking business at 10:30 at night when we're go to bed.
Which has happened.
Your favorite thing is to come and talk some business thing that just pops in your mind at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. And I'm just like...
I needed to get it out. It was a great idea.
And so we've had to kind of create some boundaries on that. Yeah. But overall, so the worst part is that you have to create boundaries, and we have to say, okay.
It seeps over.
Yeah. It all runs over, and that's okay. But we do try to have some downtime together as well.
Yeah. Way more positives than negatives, though.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Any others? Are we good?
All right. The last question I got for you, Mom, is... it's interesting. I just called you Mom. In a professional sense, I always call you Katie.
Well, I did that with my dad because I used to work with my dad as well. We've worked in family business a long time together. And so I always called my dad Fred in a business environment. And then one time, my mom is a phenomenal cook, having a big meal at the farm. And I asked Fred to pass the potatoes. I was like, Fred, can you pass the potatoes? And he was like, nope.
You're not calling me Fred.
And he was like, I'm Dad. So I think that you've caught that from me.
Okay.
That I in a business environment, I didn't feel like you needed to call me Mom all the time. Right. You could call me Katie. But in our personal home, you are sitting in my house.
Yeah, this is your fireplace.
It is.
Mom, the point of this whole thing, why we started this, was to find overcomers. And I think people are going to see, just in the stories that we've told today, that you are an overcomer. But if you could put a definition on it, it could be your life, it could be somebody in your life that you've seen. What is an overcomer?
I don't think we have to overcomplicate it. I think you can choose to keep going and not define yourself onto what has happened in the past, but to keep going to find out what's in the future.
Yeah.
And an overcomer just chooses to keep going. And we don't have to get stuck in what somebody did to you or some event happened to you, but you choose to keep going and to find out what's next. And that ends up being better tomorrows. And I think that, my best years weren't in my teens or 20s or even 30s. I'm living my best years now in my mid 40s. And I read somewhere, people call this midlife, and really like the life expectancy is past. Like I'm actually past midlife. If you're only living life expectancy to be 78 in America, women in my family live to be really old. So I might work until I'm 80. I'm not sure, but my grandma is not too far away. She's going to have her 96th birthday so soon. So I hope I live long, and I hope I'm just living midlife right now. But I'm actually excited because I know that I'm proud to be an overcomer. And I think that know that I will have more hard times in my life. I'm not going to pretend that, but I've been through these experiences to know that I chose to keep going, and I chose to see what was ahead, and that there is greater purpose. And I didn't know what was ahead. I've had to give up control, and just allow myself to trust what was next and just do the next thing.
I think you do that for so long, and you just keep going over and over and over. You stop thinking about overcoming, and you just become an overcomer. And I've got to witness that from the time that I was really young. Was you just kept going over and over and over, and I don't think you even need to think about it anymore. It's just who you are.
It is who I am. And you're right. I don't think about it. We just do the next thing in our family. And we are big idea people. And thankfully, everybody kind of goes along with my ideas. There's a lot of things that I'm not good at, but I am an idea person.
Yeah.
And so I do keep going, and I have big ideas, and you all thankfully continue with them.
Well, you probably have sat down with me more than any other person ever in my life, but thanks for sitting down today and chatting.
We would have never done this otherwise on a Saturday morning. I have to acknowledge that we are sitting down on a Saturday morning. I've only had one cup of coffee.
Yep.
And our family is all coming over for a lunch that I now have to go and cook.
Take a step back. How thankful.
So thankful.
So grateful.
Because then we're going to go to football together.
That's
and
right.
have a great day.
All right. Well, Mom, thanks for joining on the sit down, and I love you.
Oh, thanks. I love you too. You're one of my favorite people. My best work. What's my favorite thing when all the kids are in the house that you like to make fun of me?
You always say you guys are my life's best work.
And I always sleep better when all the kids are in the house.
Yes. I'm not living with you forever, though.
No, that's okay. You do. He owns an empty lot.
Cut it.
Wait, I have to do what's good. Tell me something good.
Okay, all right. It can be completely separate. All right. Yeah, Mom. So you've watched this many times, all the episodes, but I always conclude with "Tell me something good." So anything that you got that's good today.
Well,
Let's
a video
put the people on something good.
Yeah, Anna pointed out my boots. So
Zoom in on that. Garrett, can we get closer to that?
I'm a boot person. I wear cowgirl boots, all kind of boots, but these boots are Paul Green. They're Austrian, and when you are an old athlete, your knees and hips start to hurt. Anyway, you need to have a lower heel, and these different sizes, you got to look at them, but they're what would be called like salon boots or like high-end brand boots. So I just wait for Paul Green boots to go on sale during the Nordstrom anniversary sale once or twice a year, and I get them.
OOTD, where are the jeans from?
I don't know. Don't ask me. I am a mom of teenage girls, so I mean. Truthfully, these might be hand-me-downs. I don't know.
Yeah, we get Annika down here. She'd do her OOTD. Cool. Let's go. I'll finish up with something good. Garrett, what's your something good today?
Mini Alanis.
Mini Alanis.
Yep. Katie and I were talking about how they only have 100 milligrams of caffeine instead of 200, because 200 can be too much sometimes.
Yes.
So
it's just like a little shot of coffee, but it's so good. Flash up a picture of the Mini Alanis so that people know what they are. we're gonna put them on.
They're probably going to become brand sponsor of the pod.
I would love that. Would love
During this time that we've been recording this podcast, Nathan, my husband, has come in and brought a Sam's Club order
with mini Alanis.
so I can make lunch now for my family. But
Yes.
there's mini Alanis in the order.
Anna, tell me something good.
My something good is pumpkin spice lattes.
Oh,
the
it's
pumpkin spice
fall.
season is back.
It's
Spice,
fall.
everything.
Every day.
Do you love it?
The pumpkin.
I have candles burning right now. Can you smell them?
I can smell the pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
Yeah, that is good. Although Anna and I went to Tim Hortons up in Winnipeg for an event, and they did not do pumpkin spice right.
Yeah,
So maybe Canada just doesn't do it right. But
America's a little over the top. I mean,
okay. we like our
let's just be clear.
yeah. So
It's not fall yet. It's technically still summer, and people get into pumpkin spice early.
okay, my something good is the song that I've just been listening to for the past 24 hours on repeat. It's called "Let the Church Sing." It's by Taryn Wells. It is so good. It is a bop. So I don't know if we can actually play this on the pod, but I'm putting it right here.
You probably don't have rights.
I don't have rights, but we didn't hear any words off it. It was just the music. Go listen to it. Let the Church Sing. It's a bop. That's all I got. Something good.
You sound like you're born in the 90s. Bop.
I am proud to be a 90s baby. Proud to be a 90s baby. All right, that's all we got time for. Thanks for joining on the sit down. We'll see you guys next time.